We're live! Hello and welcome to another episode of HEX Therapy Live. I'm your host, Maddie Allin, with special guest HEX Monkey. Welcome.
Hey everybody, good to see you. What's up, Hexicans?
I'm your host, Maddie Allin. I'm really excited to hear. Oh, okay, perfect.
Everybody.
I'm really excited to hear about what your strategies are and how you're managing FOMO in the sudden wealth syndrome. Okay, maybe we have the tab open. Good. So yes, we are going to talk about today how to manage anxiety and how to manage FOMO, how to be able to set up a plan for yourself with HEX and to stick with it in a way that's very stress-free. And I think a lot of people's experience once their portfolio gets bigger and bigger is that they have more stress and anxiety and things that they didn't anticipate popping up: depression, anxiety, being isolated from other people. So that's part of the big picture of the list of symptoms that people can get when they have sudden wealth syndrome. And even if somebody isn't feeling wealthy themselves, there is still a market, there's a roller coaster of emotions that happens when people follow the price up and down. And so that's why I'm so excited to have HEX Monkey here. And I'm going to run the intro and then we'll be able to get into it. Does that sound good?
Good stuff.
Perfect. So welcome everybody. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button so that you can keep up to date and support the channel. And thank you so much for joining me tonight, HEX Monkey.
Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it.
You are an OG member of the Hexican community, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your story and all your insights and strategies with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Happy to do so.
Where's a good place to start?
Well, I could start right there if you like. I could tell an abbreviated version of my HEX story. Everyone's got one, right?
That's right.
And by the way, although I am an OG day one FOMO Hexican, like Maddie said, it's not all about those OGs that were day one. Like Maddie, if I remember correctly, came in a little later, and other well-known passionate Hexicans like Whales Only came in later also. So that's one thing I love about the community is people have been entering like throughout the entire year and a half that HEX has existed, which is wonderful, and we're a very welcoming community.
And I think that people are still early. I was crunching the numbers today and thinking about how quickly, with 35% interest, when people are locked the average stake length, which is 5.8 years, how quickly people's money is doubling, even just in HEX terms, is doubling every 2 years. And so people are experiencing a 3x just from a percentage APY of 35% continuing, which is probably a little too much technical detail to start off the episode. But yes, people are still early, and people have gotten in all along the way.
Yes, it is still early. Like people kind of cringe when they hear that, oh, it's still early. But I mean, sure, it's a little late to catch the massive price appreciation per unit, say if you were around in March of 2020. But look at the APY. It's still there. You can still stake long, get a large number of T shares, and it's still one of the best deals out there. That's why I'm just as passionate as before about onboarding people, and good stuff. But yeah, And the reason I'm going to tell my story isn't just to tell a story because everybody's got one, but if I succeed here, I will take you through my thought process and the conscious decisions I made during the whole time since Hex launch, and especially for, let's call them the younger crowd. Not that I'm not old. I will say I'm Gen X. Let's just leave it at that. That's the date range.
Medium age.
So don't start with the boomer jokes, people. You know who you are. But yeah, the funny part, I still think it's a funny part of my Hex journey was how unlikely it was that I would be involved in something like this in the first place. Like, I'm not one of the folks like many of you, like you, Maddie, for example, and like many others who were in, say, Bitcoin in 2016 or 17 and saw the whole big bull up and then the crash and, have battle scars to prove it and all these things. No, Hex is the first crypto that I purchased.
Wow.
And no, I looked back and I realized that's a slight exaggeration, but it's the first, I had bought just hundreds of dollars, like minuscule amounts of Bitcoin and ETH before, just kind of messing around in 2018, 2019, but it's virtually no experience, right?
Yes.
So it's very unlikely that I would stumble across Richard Hart's videos, and where I started with him was his self-help stuff and his 5, 6, 7 hour ranty streams when he was a Bitcoin maxi. And remember, I wasn't then FOMOing into Bitcoin. I was just riveted by the depth of his knowledge and presentation. So it was almost like just reading a book about the technology in the form of a video. And then one day he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to make my own token." Oh, interesting. So just continued to listen to him, continue to listen to him. And then fast forward to, there were a lot of, you guys recall, there were a lot of delays in the launch. It was originally called Bitcoin Hex, and then it was just going to be Hex. 3 more months, because software is hard, as our boy Richard likes to remind us. But next thing you know is, and I was looking at myself in the mirror like, am I really doing this? Am I really preparing to free claim, scrounge together a little bit of Bitcoin and free claim, and then enter this thing called an adoption amplifier, which is some GUI of some token by this guy? Like, am I really doing this? And it wasn't willy-nilly, though. That's like, I guess, kind of the first point or lesson is I really did my research. We're talking 6, 7 months of watching Richard's stuff and contemplating what he talked about. And now remember, I hadn't had much experience in any of it, but because I'm a technical person, I'm a software engineer by trade for many decades. And I listened to his case about, here's why centralized exchanges suck, here's why middlemen suck, here's the blockchain functional use case, here's how people are going to enter the project through the adoption amplifier, which is not some radical thing. It's very similar to what EOS did. So I listened to all this and just let it seep, all the while not buying anything of any kind, just listening. So I guess that's the first lesson for life, really, is if it's a combination of trusting your instincts, because clearly I went with my gut to follow this guy at all, Richard. Trust your instincts and then back it up with research.
Yes.
And you need both. Like, you can nerd out all day or for a month on material, but unless you're following your gut in doing so, you can just go down a rabbit hole that won't serve you well.
Well, and what I've found is that whenever Richard speaks about something that I'm an expert on, he nails it. And that's something that I can't appreciate about all the disciplines I'm not an expert in, but that's enough, right? That's rare to see someone who's, such a guru in so many things. And then really that's what we're finding, right? That Hex was designed so well that it's doing what it was designed to do. Imagine that in a crypto,
Right.
It's like new territory.
Right. Which is why, I mean, just like the rest of us, I'm not unique here, which is why I was so almost personally offended when the whole scam nonsense started coming up after launch. I was personally offended, even though I never chatted with Richard directly or talked to him. I thought, how dare you just make these accusations, people? And I don't need to cover that. That's we've all covered that stuff as a community. But
Sure.
so then thinking of, I mean, I remember like it was yesterday. I get prepared for the AA, and the key I want to emphasize is I was all alone. I did not have any buddies that I was sharing this with at the time, and
Okay.
I had no deep experience in crypto. I kept thinking, am I really doing this? And it was like, yes, because I did my research and I trusted my instinct. But it was also this ties into your theme, Maddie, since you came on the scene for mental health. I checked my
Yes.
mental health often, which was, am I comfortable doing this? Yes, because it's I looked at it at the time as a long shot speculation. Can I handle a long shot speculation? Yes. What's my plan in executing on it? That's the other thing. You have to have a plan based on the information you have at the time. That's key also. See, there's so many keys here.
Yes. Yes.
So I did my homework and prepared, and I have notes here. I remember my overall, I have a lot of themes that I want to communicate to, especially newbies and younger people, but applicable to anyone, is I like keeping things simple. And because of that, I didn't want to take any chances. I just call it the happy path in software. Like if you use complex software, there's a lot of ways to go through it, but there's the happy path is like the base trajectory through it. So for me, that meant laptop only, Chrome browser, MetaMask. Done.
Done.
Now I know now that doesn't mean I don't realize there's other browsers out there and people have had a lot of success using their phones and fancy wallets and all these things. But I'm like, I could get into all that just as kind of a technical exploration, but with something like this, didn't want to take any chances.
Cool.
And to this day, I have not transacted outside of those simple things. And I love Staker app, but I admit I only use it in a read-only manner for some of its features. If something like that had been available early on, maybe I would have used it. But to this day, laptop only, no phone, Chrome browser, MetaMask, go.hex.com. It works.
Yes.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Insert other cliches here. But now, why did I do that? That was for mental health purposes. Like I had something that worked. Why mess with it?
Yes.
Now, I would like to rewind and mess with it a little bit, and that would be to possibly use a ledger or a cold storage at the time. But even then, it's okay. You can kind of do that retroactively. So the point is, I had a plan, and that plan was to go in big on day one and then dollar cost average after that into the AA. Now, do I think I'm an idiot to FOMO in day one? Well, I could have fun with that and say, yeah, that was nuts. But I'll actually, looking back, it was based on my understanding of the system at the time. For those of you that were there, remember day one, there was going to be 1 billion hex tokens released, 1 billion. Then day two, it was going to drop instantly to half that, 512 million tokens. And then the variable there was based on the number of people free claiming with Bitcoin. I expected the daily inflation to drop more quickly than it did. It essentially just drip, 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 other than the transition from day one to day two, which was massive. After that, it was barely a trickle. So I actually expected there to be drastically less supply than there was, or the daily supply released I expect to be linearly dropping, and it didn't.
Sure.
So then in hindsight, day one FOMO was not the optimal solution. But another life lesson here: you can't go back in life and beat yourself up for a decision that you thought through very well, but had maybe limited knowledge or limited understanding. Plus, some things are random and you can't predict anyway.
You were doing your best with the knowledge that you had at the time, and judging yourself based on the knowledge you have now is not the most accurate thing, right? And
Right.
so honoring like your understanding at the time, I think it's a strong idea for mental health.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's not fair to your current or past self to
Yes.
to judge yourself in that manner. It's not fair. It's not playing fair
That's right.
to look back. Hey, past self, you're an idiot. Just because I'm current self and I have an unfair advantage. So there's a psychological lesson in there.
That's right.
And now, between the point of, as I tell this story and share the lessons from it, there were, I guess, I have three, my top three most memorable experiences or moments in my HEX journey, and I'll get to all three shortly. But first, my AA experience was completely solo, like I mentioned earlier. Like I was alone. Imagine like I'm at work every day and it's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever time it was. Got to sneak off into a conference room and send an ETH to this thing. I felt like a lunatic, quite frankly. Like I said, this is the work of a madman, going to this screen and doing this. But also, if you start to doubt yourself, check your premises again. Don't just get emotional and say, oh, I'm scared, abort, or I'm excited, put 10 times as much in this day just because I feel like it. No, take a step back. Is like, okay, is there any new information? No, not really. Is my logic that I used earlier still intact? Yes. Okay, keep going. So that's what I did. But then like for me personally, maybe a lot of you too, like my grand day of validation was that first 24-hour stream on Discourse Syndicate. That's the first, I think it was the first of its kind where random people could join in and cycle through. And I was blown away. I said, wow, I'm not alone out here. A bunch of people have been doing some form of the same thing. I'm not such a freak after all. Yay. I mean, it's nice to get validation, right? You gotta trust your own instincts and go with your own gut. But let's face it, it is nice to find then like-minded people. I didn't know they existed.
Yes. I too had a similar experience in the sense that I got in on day 4 and had been following not as long as you had, Richard. But my entering into the adoption amplifier was a solo task. It was something I did, and I didn't have people in my life who wanted to talk about crypto because they liked crypto. I had people in my life who were willing to listen, because they care about me, but not because they care about crypto. And so finding the HEX community, I agree, was a big moment for me too.
Yeah, and not only were there people that were kind of doing the same thing I was doing, but it was this wild pirate, eccentric whack pack, and I couldn't believe it. Like I was so excited, and I hopped on that stream for a little bit and shared, and I just could barely sleep that night. I'm like, I I made the right choice, found a new tribe because of the way,
Yes.
because there's a story for another day, but the way my life was going, it was the perfect time to have a new tribe. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And here they are. Like the Hollywood squares, hexagon Hollywood squares on the screen there. And yeah, so that was great. And then, in fact, my only regret is that from then on, I didn't join like Discourse Syndicate more often than I did. I hopped on like maybe once a month. But even for that, there was logical reasoning for that. At the time, we were all trying to figure out how this thing worked. Like, what are shares? What's the share price? Oh, daily payout. I get it now. Well, what's the likely outcome of this? How can we fight the fudsters? And unless I had like a new idea that someone hadn't already come up with, I didn't really join. So in hindsight, one tiny regret is just join for the hop on more streams just for the socialization.
Yes.
So there's another life lesson there is don't be shy. If you see an opportunity for whatever, go for it. So that's a small personal note. Now everybody's got their own staking strategies and are proud of them and should be proud of them. I'm only sharing mine because what it achieved for me was low anxiety and mental health.
Awesome.
And some of you might cringe at some of the details, but I stick by the plan. Yeah, so let me get into it. So my plan was to set up a ladder from the very, very beginning, and that's easy to do. Go into AA every day. I was buying a little on Uniswap also. Immediately staking it. Pretty soon I had 10-year ladder several times a year. Pretty soon expanded that to 15. And again, I was checking myself. I'm like, am I really locking this stuff up for 15 years? Is that nuts? Quick check of the premises. Oh, no, it still checks out. It's a speculation. Who knows what's going to happen? No, and the other thing that I did is, okay, my whole strategy is stake it all, ladder it. And in advance, I also planned to, as these stakes ended, no matter what the price was, I'm going to sell. And by sell, I mean either sell the interest or the whole thing. You're all cringing now. Oh my God. You've been dumping. You gave up your T shares. Well, in 2021, I had to start doing that because that was my plan.
Yes.
Now, in January, the price was like when my first stake came due to end, it was like 0.7 of a penny. And I felt the discomfort in selling it. So I admit I delayed a couple days before selling. Yes, so you're looking at me. I sold some HEX at 0.7 of a cent. Let me see if there's any laughter in the chat real quick.
Shout out to Whales Only for rating the stream. Shout out to everybody who's joining us, and hit the like and subscribe button. We're talking about how to manage anxiety when it comes to selling, sticking to your plan, especially when we're on this price roller coaster. And that's a feature, not a bug, the high price volatility in HEX.
Yes, indeed. And I knew before even getting into this particular product that I am not a trader. I am not a market timer. I learned that from attempting to buy and sell stocks in the 90s and 2000s. I would buy just, on Fidelity or Schwab or whatever, buy a little bit, hope that it goes up, sell it. And it was so stressful and I was not good at it. I mean, that's a hard game, right?
Rigged markets.
Oh yeah. And we could have some fun with, like RG3 always says there's nothing new under the sun. And he's right. The scams in those days were penny stocks based on nothing.
Mm.
which you could call a scam. And then there were some penny stocks which are actual legitimate companies, just long shots. So it
Yes.
was and it's kind of like now there's blatant scams out there and just coins with little or no value, but you can't really call them a scam. But back to the stakes. So I was admitting that I almost deviated from my plan. I'm like, I can't sell this. It's 7/10 of a cent. And I agonized about it for 2 days. So those are 2 days of mental unhealth, like anxiety. I felt it in my stomach. And I'm like, no, this was not the plan, dude. Talking to myself. You got to
Yes.
follow through with this. The price is almost certainly going to go up, but we never know, right? I mean, we really didn't know.
Yes. That's right.
That's the thing.
How
So
how
ever
did
since
you
then, I've
how,
stuck to it. I've
how,
either, and my needs are different than other people's too. Like I was actually, especially for my age, a little short on, let's call it liquid cash savings. So I needed to, and that gave me anxiety. So actually converting some hex to US dollars relieved the anxiety,
good.
as did not having to do any market timing or trading. And you may think I'm exaggerating calling that trading, but if you have a stake ending and your plan was to sell it at that point, but you think, oh, I'll wait till it goes up, you're trading,
Yes.
or your market timing. And since I had definitive experience knowing that I suck at that, I'm not going to start now.
Yeah, and it's not that you suck at that, it's that you are not part of the rigged system, right? And so you can't benefit if you're not an insider who's rigged the system. Is that right?
True, that's a good point. So it's so looking
And
back with, we're sitting here on 12 cents or something. Do I regret selling a little bit of it? And it wasn't that much, but at 7/10 of a cent, nope, because that was the plan. And the only alternative to that plan was stress and anxiety and market timing. Wasn't going to do that. So that's
yes,
the
that was there's an opportunity cost when it comes to people's mental health, right? And when you are aware enough and experienced enough to know that day trading and trading in general is a reckless behavior, is part of what Hex was designed to solve, right? To cure people uh, day trading and not sticking to their plan. Hex holds you accountable to the part where you don't get your staked Hex liquid too soon without paying a penalty. But Hex doesn't automatically sell into US dollars for you. You have to do, there's still parts of the system you have to do yourself. And so I think it's valuable to hear your perspective because it's also, I think, very rare in crypto to hear a community that can stand different opinions and still, that's one thing I'm proud of in Quant Gang and in all the streams that we do, that people really value each other's opinions and think critically about things. But yeah, I think it's a really good point to remember that other communities don't allow people to talk about selling and they don't
right.
celebrate the successes that are occurring when you're not just getting lucky, right? Um, and there is a lot of luck involved. But when we think about sudden wealth syndrome, we need to acknowledge both the luck and the part that you did. You did your homework. You followed Richard. You worked on self help. You worked on your mental health. You made a plan after considering the logic. You questioned yourself. Is this crazy to send money to my future self 15 years in the future, longer than Bitcoin has existed? And you said, this is speculative. I'm going to do it. And so you
Yeah.
did it. And And now I think it's really commendable, and it shows, I think, your own progress, right? And your own achievement that you're able to sell and not get taken over by greed. For me, I was lucky that I was ready, I was experienced enough and ready when I got into Hex to practice buying dips and taking profits at tops. And I only did that with a small percentage of my portfolio, let's say 10% or so. But there was so much pain for me associated with selling a top and buying a bottom. It didn't feel good to me. It also didn't feel good to send money to my future self because I could feel the pain of having to delay gratification for so long, right? Facing the music, so to speak. And but at the end of the day, of course, it's awesome to have this kind of a tool in Hex. And so I'm really glad that we have you speaking out about sticking to your plan of selling, because really what that does is it keeps you mentally well. It allows you to have that extra security that you wanted in terms of your liquid dollar savings that you didn't have before Hex. And then also it gives the next guy an opportunity to buy, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And for those that do spend time, let's say, doing some more advanced market timing or even trading, I'm not even dinging you. I'm saying, man, if you've got the aptitude and the passion for that and can handle it, that's the big key. Freaking go for it, man. Like, don't do my boring DCA in, DCA out. Like, you might be able to do better. You can optimize. Many of you probably have optimized better, especially the many of you. I know many of you by name who've never sold a single one. Like, you're doing awesome. But for me, this was the way to go. And that's that. And then let's see, my next. Yeah, so that's the plan. It also helped make it those early end stakes that came due, sticking to plan and selling most of those felt fine because there's 15 years of ladders ahead. And just like you would do in traditional finance, for those of you who have 401ks or IRAs, whatever your asset allocation is, you typically put some money in there every paycheck. Maybe you're buying the S&P 500 every 2 weeks at whatever the price. And maybe your general plan for the future was one day you'll retire and start taking out a regular income. Well, that's like dollar cost averaging out. Same thing here. That's all I'm doing.
Yes. Which is a very rational strategy. And again, something that Hex is designed to promote, I would say promote. Now, how often, so you made a plan, you made a staking ladder, and you said initially you did it yearly and quarterly, and then still while you were in your accumulation phase, you added more stakes. How often do your stakes end?
Embarrassingly often. I mean, is another opportunity to say, based on what I knew at the time. So it's more or less every 2 weeks for a very long time.
I knew the answer to that, and I think that's awesome. Why did you structure it like that?
Because my bias mentally at the time was I've been a salaried employee for a long time. So what is my comfort zone? Paychecks. So I wanted to set up a Hex paycheck. I knew there were other ways to think about it and structure it, but that's another way to spread out the exiting risk. Can almost imagine, like, and I really thought of it this way, like, okay, I'm going to get a paycheck from this side job. They pay every 2 weeks in a foreign currency.
Yes.
By analogy, that's what it is. A very volatile foreign currency called HEX by analogy, but I think that analogy holds. Now,
and why don't you think that that's awesome? I think that's awesome.
it is awesome. It's like if I wanted to cheat and go back in time and optimize, well, I'd probably do it more quarterly or monthly, because gas fees and, you know, having to go in there and transact annoyingly frequently, you know, that kind of stuff. But
do you continue to ladder yourself out in time?
Not much. That was mostly accomplished in 2020.
I know one thing that I just did recently is I'm in my 16th yearly step in my ladder, because we've already made it past a year stake coming out. And so I restaked the amount of hex I would need in order to get the same number of T shares. And that wasn't easy. So
it's likely that if I deviate a little bit from this plan, I'll do it in that form. I would sell some and restake some more. Although I'm older than you, I want to enjoy some of this while I'm young and functional. So
yes.
we'll see. And that's the other thing. That's the most blatant way in which everybody's situation is different. Your age, you know, for some people, 15 years is nothing. You can, you know, when that first 15-year dream account, stealing Kareem's word there, when your first 15-year dream account is reached, maybe you already set up the next 15 years. But that's not ideal for me. So, you know, everybody's different. But I would really recommend that everybody consider to know thyself. And if you know yourself well enough, come up with strategies, not just for this, but it ties perfectly into the Pulse sacrifice. We'll get to there in a second.
Cool.
Or even to other things in life. If you take on burdens or opportunities in your life, think about what you can handle. Like, definitely take risks, but be aware of what you're doing and be prepared to handle it and come up with ways to handle it.
And that's part of not only knowing yourself, as you say, but also being honest with yourself and honoring your own limitations.
Yes.
Working as a therapist, I saw many people have an aha moment where they realized that they were holding themselves to too high of a standard and thus unable to function. Whereas when they brought their expectations down, they ended up performing much better and then eventually exceeding their own expectations. Yeah. And so that can be a valuable lesson as well.
And by the way, even though I don't trade and market time myself, I completely nerd out and enjoy watching like Quant Gang and Knights of Crypto, and all they do is charts and and look at here and then the fractals and the Fibonacci patterns. Like, I watch that riveted and transfixed by it and enjoy it, even though I'm not going to necessarily act on that. It's still a lot of, I mean, who knows, maybe one day, but that's like, I will read, you know, fascinating articles about physics, even though I'm not going to be a physicist. You know, yes. I really enjoy what people are doing, saying, oh, wow, if you really, I see the chart patterns, that makes sense. You could probably exploit that. I'm not going to try, but kudos for those who are doing it.
Agreed. Yeah, there's something to that I don't know that everybody really quite understands, why the quantitative side of things is so alluring to people who even don't trade, myself included. And I think it balances out our left brain and our right brain to some extent, you know, because we all are very verbal, right? Consuming all these live streams and interested in the narratives, also the technical merit and everything. But to see just the pure math and numbers and to be able to link the two together, I think is satisfying both sides of the brain.
Yeah, and I just love hearing different perspectives from all the hexagons who come at it from a different angle. And let's see, onward in the journey was let's see, like the first big moment was the 24-hour stream, and the next one that sticks out was the last day of the AA when Hexologist had his like celebration stream, and we did the final countdown, and we were bombarding him with lemons and stuff. That was another like
Yeah.
big moment with the community. Like I captured that in a way that I could rewatch it many times over the next few weeks. Like that was adrenaline and goosebump inducing. It was so awesome. For those of you who were there,
Yes.
you remember that. It was a big elation and celebration and vindication and deeper connections with the community.
Yeah, shout out to
And for those of
Hexologist
you who were,
and everybody who watched his daily stream. He streamed
yeah,
for hundreds of days straight up until Las Vegas. I think it was 560 days or 70 days. And as a part of that, of course, he caught the end of the 360-day launch period of Hex called the Adoption Amplifier. And he had popularized, along with other Hex streamers, a platform called D-Live, which is now not our favorite. But without getting into all that, the way to tip and show your support was to throw a lemon, which was, I believe, tipping about 1 cent worth of value. And so at key moments for the community, we can all remember having a lemon fight and the screen just going so fast you couldn't even see it.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for defining what that was. Some people are like, lemons. What is that dude talking about? Yeah. So then number 3 after that was the Vegas meetup. That was just the third mind-blowing celebratory experience and validation of we were all in this together. I mean, those of you who were there, or even just watching it, that were there in spirit. I mean, it was fantastic. Never really had an experience like that where I met a group of people and people that I really end up caring about, meet them online first, and then meet them in person. Like, when does that happen? I mean, at least
Totally.
in my experience, that's never happened before.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I felt like I knew some of these people for years, running around with, I don't need to name names. Everybody knows who they are. It was so much fun. And the discussions we had, we just continued to nerd out on all of it. It was,
Absolutely.
it was really great. Now, notice the theme in these. When I was thinking about this today before we started, like what are the biggest moments for me? Those were the 3, and those were all community moments.
Yes.
They weren't moments where, oh, it first pumped a half a cent or a tenth of a cent or a cent. Like, I don't remember when that happened. I know it happened. It's great that it happened. But just today, reflecting on that, I said, wow, it's the people that are in your life that matter the most anyway. We just happen to be gathered around this. I mean, it just sounds like a cliche as I say it, but it's nice that we're all standing in a circle around this marvelous product called Hex. But it's the friendships and connections are a beautiful thing. Always be grateful for it. And
Absolutely.
there's more to comes. There is more to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing to see how the community has evolved. I remember back maybe 2017 or 2018, somewhere in there, was the first time I ever met somebody in real life who also loved crypto. And this was before Hex was released or anything. But I mean, it was a friend of a friend, and we stayed up all night talking about crypto the first time we met. And it's really amazing when you get to nerd out so much with people, especially for me. I had been studying crypto by myself right? Reading popular articles in the crypto sphere and watching live streams, right, of all the Bitcoiners, and even, got involved with selling ASIC miners and all that good kind of stuff myself, because I wanted to learn as much as I could, right? And was so excited about this idea of programmable money, and in my case, the possibility of trying to program mental health into money itself, into crypto. And so that's another reason that people have heard me speak about why I'm so passionate about hexes and the community in particular, is because these are all things that are coalescing together, because staking, I believe, has the emergent property of creating community and creating, in some cases, really good mental health for people who are working on themselves.
Yeah, and that's something that I just also loved about this community. I mean, I'll use you as an example. Like when I first saw you come in and stream, I was like, wow, really? Somebody, a mental health professional has found synergy between that profession and a crypto? Like, that's so unlikely to happen, and it happened. And it didn't happen with other cryptos. It happened with this one, where there would be the potential synergy and somebody driven to do it. And that's the same with, a lot of the other streamers that, I mean, I'm just thinking randomly now, is unprepared, but like Nerd Girl has made it all about building bridges. What other community
Yes.
has that as a theme? And then you have the whole, other people are more like widely expert in all kinds of other coins, and then putting Hex in that context gives it more depth and credibility. Like, it's just so many different. The Joker, I mean, pure comedy is a Hexican.
I
Like,
love the Joker.
yeah,
Yeah.
what other community has a, I don't even know what to call him, a character devoted his whole persona to or reborn as a Hexican. I mean, it's great stuff. There's just nothing like this. And let's see. So now here we are in the Pulse sacrifice phase. So any ideas of how I might have approached this one? Same darn way.
I'm gonna guess that you made a plan and did your research, and now you're sticking to your plan. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And
And I'm not the only one. I
how
think
does
some
that
other
make you
people.
feel? Does that relieve any of the stress of the sacrifice phase?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I came up with a plan. Although in this case, actually, yeah, this is a good one. Oh, and a lot of people have kind of adopted this same mentality and calling it sack and chill. I don't know who to credit with that phrase, but just sack and chill, man. As long as you're
Markable
in.
thoughts.
Oh, yeah. And that's so right. And it's like, just like the adoption amplifier. As long as you got in, you ended up doing great, even at the day one FOMO price. So I feel the pain of people in the, I've been in the Telegram chat, and people are actually like, oh no, I effed up. I bought day one. I should have waited till day 17 and I have no more money. Like, dude, you're in Pulse in the sacrifice phase. It's like the best possible time to be in.
Yeah.
Like, and you probably had a plan and executed it, and you can't look back. I mean, it pays to be open-minded and be willing to adjust your plan if you get new information. That part's fine. Like, my plan was to go in the first 5 days with the intended amount, and I did that. But then somewhere along the line after that, I kind of had an epiphany about what the last 3 days might potentially be, and it's just potentially. Starts tomorrow. So I have a small bag to possibly sacrifice there. So that's a little adjustment there. But if Hex moons to 25 or 30 cents and you can sack at that rate, I'm not going to beat myself up for having done it at 14. No, there's no point. You're still in early to something amazing.
That's right, and we can learn from the Hex launch phase that people who got in on day one are in massive profits, just the same as people who got in on day 33. And it's not like anybody could have gone back and known who wasn't already there paying attention at the time and making the decisions that they made. And so I have heard a lot of people say, I missed out on Hex, I missed out on Bitcoin, I'm not going to miss out on Pulse. And
Yep,
that's
there you
pretty
go.
cool to hear. It's cool to hear how many people are adopting it. And right now I'm looking at the market cap of Ethereum. My mouth is watering a little bit because it says 280 billion. And we've still got 3 more days. And really, what are the possibilities? That what we're going to have about $1 billion sacrificed, or that there's going to be a big play come in by the origin address or by somebody else, and that could just pump the price and give us another whale that can take care of us. Uh,
Yep.
so, what do you think?
Yeah. Now,
Or
and throughout this stream, I've been giving presenting my mindset and approach as if I've been perfect the whole time. Now, I must admit that's not true. Temptation always enters your mind, and there have been some days or weeks, like in the last 6 months, where I got some anxiety, like, oh, maybe it's wrong, maybe I should. I felt the urge. That's what I'm sharing, is that you're going to feel those urges to do something kind of reckless, and it's up to you to recognize that that is what's happening, and then take a step back and use your left brain to think, is this a good idea? Should I rethink? Or am I just getting emotional and hyper? Because there's a big difference. But as for the sack phase, let's see. Since my theme here is advising people how to not worry about it's like forest for the trees. It's like worrying about the fine grained nuances and forgetting the big picture, which is that you're in. The big picture is that you're in. You
correct.
sacrificed, you're in. Another one people I see struggling with is, well, wait, what's good? This one kills me the most. Like, sacrificing is a big deal. You're giving up a bunch of money. But which is going to be worth more, Hex or PHEX?
Mm.
Oh my God, slice and dice, imagine, speculate. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't mean to be crass, but who cares? If you're in both, it could go like this, and you're in both. So if one pumps, yay, you have it. If the other one pumps, yay, you have it. It's really hard to mess this up, in other words.
Well, I think that there's something to that, even though, we can sit back and say, who cares, right? Because we're coming from the perspective of abundance. We're coming from the perspective of everybody wins. But when people are bringing in their old perspectives, right, from the system that was rigged against them, then they're
True.
going to be thinking in a trading mindset, which is developed around scarcity and developed around a zero sum game where in order for you to win, somebody else has to lose. And I think people are just still having, even people in HEX are having one foot in the future and one foot in the past. And wherever their mind lands is probably what types of live streams they're listening to, how they're staying grounded in their personal lives, how they're taking care of themselves with mental health, with physical health, and everything in between.
Now, there's probably some very advanced people with not insider knowledge, but deeper knowledge as to what the likely outcome of these things are. Maybe some of them are even watching right now. And I
Yes.
say, go for it, man. If you are able to project and predict with any accuracy whether what EHEX or PHEX or Pulse are going to do, by all means exploit that knowledge. It's just since I don't have that, it would be constant gambling and second guessing if I were to enter that game. So I'm not going to do it. And plus, there's a simple way out: sacrifice some amount, buy some, and do all three. Sacrifice to get some
Yes.
pulse, buy some hex so that it gets duplicated, stake some hex so that stakes get duplicated. Ta-da! You win.
Another strategy that I've observed myself following, and I will say that this is not financial advice, not medical or therapy advice, right? This is entertainment and free speech, and speaking from experience, I have often thought to myself, why didn't I listen to Richard? And then every once in a while, I pick up on a clue that he drops. For example, around the time of the big payday afterwards, right, when the price dumped down to a third of a cent, he said that, he reiterated, right, because Hex is not a security, because he doesn't make forward-looking price statements or anything like that, right? But he made an observation. He said, it looks like somebody keeps buying up around a third of a cent, that Hex can't get below that. And I said, aha! So, I bought a little bit more than I was planning to at that point. And, that was helpful, of course, because it continued to go up after that, and that was the bottom. So I'm just throwing out there that people who have read between the lines of what Richard is saying have done very well as well.
Yeah, man, the Easter eggs in Richard Hart's streams are like, I'm sure I notice only a small portion of them, but they're there if you listen. And sometimes even when it's kind of overt, it's still subtle. Like when he says, "Hey, I want the price of Hex to be high everywhere." I mean, it's a statement of intent. That doesn't mean he can control it, but that is proof that his intention is not to let one wither and die and the other to do well. Which was some of the speculating from the beginning. Some newbies are like, wait, you mean Hex is going to be replaced by PHEX? No, that's not the plan.
And, he doesn't encourage trading, right? So
right.
That's another big clue, right? The things that he says explicitly, for our benefit. And I think, again, going back to this principle that we've identified here of people having one foot in the future, one foot in the past when it comes to being in Hex, which seems to not be a rigged system, and the legacy system, the stock market, which seems like it is a rigged system, that it's easy for us to carry over our mindset and to hear someone like Richard, who is following the laws. He's, not risking Hex to be classified as a security because he's not using the language that would cause it to be such. If he really wanted to rug pull, he could say a bunch of stuff that would make the price go up.
And he would have rug
more
pulled by
explicitly.
now.
Yeah.
Like the
yeah.
OA,
and
the OA has sold 0 Hex so far. And I know that's not OA and Richard are two different things, but
correct.
all this rug pulling, it hasn't happened. Year and a half later.
It's glorious, his track record of being able to go on hundreds of hours of live streams for free to educate people and to be able to stand by the things that he's already said. And so what has that done? That's created a lot of trust. And but it's not trust because it's not blind trust, right? It's a form of verification, right? That he hasn't led people wrong so far, and so to me that says a lot, and that allows me to be calm and to be really excited about this.
Yeah. And in terms of so how do you, if you're listening to this saying, oh, it sounds great, how do I check, how do I look inward and see if the plan that I'm coming up with is within my acceptable range of coping, let's say? How do I know if it's too much? Because how do you figure that out? I'll tell you how I figure it out. Maybe this is getting maybe slightly offbeat, but with your background, tell me what you think, Maddie. For me, it's
Sure.
all about the solar plexus, people. If I feel like doing something, like let's say I'm start wanting to put my FOMO pants on day 18 or something. If it's the wrong thing to do, you got to think logically also, but there's that part of the body between the navel and the chest called the solar plexus. And if you want to nerd out on that, there's like Eastern mysticism aspects of it, and there's nerve bundle aspects of it, and how that is the focal point of your body for anxiety. Now, perhaps you, with your psychological background or smart people in the audience, I probably completely messed that up in terms of describing it, but that's what I check. Like you can kind of, it's like there's the expression, that doesn't sit well with me. Usually it's like
Yes.
something somebody else did in your life. That doesn't sit well with me. Well, where doesn't it sit well? For me, it's in that solar plexus area. And if I get all hyped up on day 19 and decide to double my sacrifice, it probably won't sit well with me. And I'll be able to tell right away. And that just comes with experience. So I guess the advice there is, yes, use your brain and your logic, but just also, how does it feel? Like, you can even imagine yourself, this is, I guess, this is getting a little woo-woo, but you can imagine yourself making the decision. Like, okay, I'm sitting here. I just decided to double my sacrifice amount from the original plan and do extra FOMO on day 19. There, I did it. How do I feel now? Like you can actually imagine a future event happening, and your subconscious doesn't know whether it really happened or not. And there's like a whole world of that kind of thing, like law of attraction. People talk about that. That's not necessarily the most riveting example, but you can imagine the future, and your body feels it as if it's happening. In the same way, if you recall a wonderful time in the past or a terrible time, you'll experience the same sensations to some extent. Everybody's different, but
I think that there's a lot to that, because even modern neuroscience is finding that gut bacteria, right, and the whole biome, right, that surrounds a person, right, there's this microscopic force field around us, literally, of good and bad bacteria, mostly good bacteria, hundreds of billions of bacterial cells that stop everything in the world from killing us, which is infectious or too much bad bacteria type stuff. But they're finding a huge link with mental health and the gut, to such an extent that they talk about the gut-brain axis, which is where the bacteria in your gut are sending signals to your brain because they're connected to the neurons, the actual brain cells that are in your digestive tract. So there certainly is a lot of woo-woo stuff that is being confirmed, and
yeah,
a lot that's still unknown, and that would fall into the mystic and psychic categories that I think are outstanding for people to explore and to see what's right for them. But also it reminded me, what you're doing of mindfulness, right? And just projecting and having, even having a conversation with your future self, right? I tell people all the time, have a conversation with yourself, your present self, to work on your self-esteem, to make that an action verb, and something where you're saying nice things about yourself, especially when you're taking care of yourself, so that you get the synergy that can drill down and change the negative beliefs that many people get about themselves. It can unlock those subconscious automatic thoughts of self-doubt
Right.
and negativity by simply uh, self-esteeming and self-care, doing the walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time. So,
And
um,
someone in the chat here has a good point. I'm the contrary. If I feel uncomfortable, it usually means I need to do it, and then soon I get rewarded. I know where he's coming from with
ah,
that. It's like
interesting.
it it's it's a really insightful point, and I think what he's getting at there is sometimes you can feel uncomfortable or a little bit anxious and hyped up about something. It's more like a nervous energy, even though you know it's the right thing to do. You're still kind of excited, and it's hard to
Sure.
tell. It's hard to you have to really pay attention to see if it's that sensation he's talking about, or if it's more of a no, my body's saying this does not sit well with me. So that's a something to explore.
And I want to, again, remind people, because I see this comment saying, I missed out on the sudden wealth, found out about Hex in October and joined. Not a dolphin, and congrats to you early guys. Yeah, I think, Hex being designed better than Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin having a 6 million X return, we've only gotten to about 6,000 X in Hex so far. And the, you know, it's like still maybe 1,000 or 10,000 fewer people in Hex than in Bitcoin, which suggests to me that uh, that we're still early. It being pre-viral, there being so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the product. So,
Right.
um,
If you think about the fact that we're still being gate kept, and and if that's ever lifted, that's a
but
catalyst. There's
but
other
it
there's other potential catalysts of I forget the name of the firm that might end up that Richard has alluded to might end up producing a mainstream product backed by Hex. I mean, there's all kinds of potential future positive catalysts that could drive just the unit price higher. And not financial advice, of course, but to the person that said, "Oh, I missed out." Well, maybe you haven't, because if even if the price itself 10x is from here or beyond, and you've done a long stake at this type of APY, you're going to be killing it. You're going to be
yes,
killing it.
it it also, yeah, it occurs to me, that in the early days for us, we were probably just as uncertain as you are now. And part of the reason that I made tshare.app was to get people who were not even ready, really, um, for Hex, to just try to experience a small amount of it. Because, in my opinion, it's experiencing the process of Hex, time locking your crypto so that you can send money to your future self. If you haven't experienced that for a long enough period of time, then there's going to be part of the equation that you're missing. And so part of the benefit of Hex comes from that experiential dimension. And so that's why we created the tool to allow people to make, like, at the time it was $40 stakes, and to set up a 15-year, a 10-year, a 5-year, and then keep some liquid. And um, So that's always an option for people to be patient, right? Because HEX is proof of weight, and delaying gratification is a horribly patient process.
Yeah, and the Pulse chain itself is also going to be a catalyst for HEX, because this isn't just speculation. I remember before Pulse was announced that it was going to be a thing, there were people in the HEX Telegram saying, I want to invest so bad. This seems really great. But the gas fees, like, it's just not worth it for me. Sorry, I'm out. Well, they're going to come back. So there's going to be an influx of either new users, maybe with a smaller amount to put in, or those people that wanted to get in before but couldn't. Well, now they can. So it's just like in traditional finance. If you're watching some stock of some company, they use the term catalyst. What's going to be the catalyst? Are they going to tap into a new market? Is there going to be a macroeconomic event that would serve as a catalyst, some kind of black swan? Well, same with HEX. There's these things that we are talking about are potential future catalysts.
People don't understand, and Richard says this, how high the price of HEX can go. And to me, and I don't think I've ever talked about this, but to me, when I was early in HEX, I tried to make a plan, and I tried to project, okay, at what point would I sell? The price has, and so I made like 20 lines on an Excel spreadsheet, and I said like, okay, maybe I'm gonna sell, 90% of my coins at these different outrageous prices that I can come up with, right? And market cap was one of the things. I mean, we're talking a year and a half ago. Once I realized that HEX was going to start paying more than 5 or 10% interest, because it didn't start off as super high interest, I was thinking, how high can this go, right? And so let me see if I've got it here. I mean, I did not think it could go as high as it already has, right? And I was basing it on the kind of the market cap, and I was thinking, okay, well, here's the entire market cap of Bitcoin. Well, it's designed to go up 10,000x, was what Richard had said, but can it really get that high? I didn't know, right? And so I can't find it right off, but
you were probably like, ooh, what if it gets as high as, a tenth of a cent? And then what if it gets as high as a cent?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Yeah, so I thought, so $100 billion market cap is on my list, was like 5 levels beyond what I thought a long shot was, right?
Yeah. And we're almost there.
Yeah, we've already been there. And so it's incredible. And so now I've updated my worldview and I've changed my plan, right? I haven't sold 90% of my HEX. I ended up time locking a lot of it, right? Staking it out. And so I've been really happy to be able to update my, my position now that I understand it much better. But so, yeah, how high can it go? Well, I think today I would change like the highest point on the line, because I made this spreadsheet over a year ago, and the highest I could imagine it going was 3.5 trillion, because I thought, okay, well that's about half of the entire CD market between the United States and Japan, right? Seven trillion. So I was thinking maybe 3.5 trillion would be the highest it could go. And now what do I think? Now I think, what's the absolute highest? Like, I don't think it's going this high, but like, what's the highest it could go? I don't know. Maybe like 15 times the GDP of the of the world, right?
Yeah, what's the theoretical limit there? It's fun to think about.
So, but what I do know is that with Hex paying 35% APY, because of the rule of 72, people's investments, if they're so you might be getting 30 or 40% APY if you're locking the average length or more compared to others in the system. So right now that's 5.8 or about 6 years. And so the rule of 72 says that at 35% APY, you're going to double your money about every 2 years. So that's like 3 doubles already built in if you're willing to wait that long, right?
Right. So then that's like my personal experience with Hex and like the mental health principles and suggestions I have for people. And another more general one might be whatever it is that is causing you anxiety, whatever it is, there's usually an action you can take. Not always, but there's usually an action you can take to alleviate that anxiety somewhat, rather than just sit there and suffer and worry. For example, you saw the ending my stakes as planned relieves my anxiety. If you're
Yes.
worried about, oh my gosh, I have a lot and this is at an all-time high, I'm screwed if it dumps, let's say, because Hex
Yes.
dumps and it always recovers. Like if you're up late at night worried that what happens, your life plans are destroyed if it drops from 13 cents to 2 cents again.
Yes.
But that might apply to some people.
Correct.
You can take an action to relieve that, which would be, to sell a little bit, or make it so that wouldn't be such a devastating event for you. Because if you're based on your needs and your life and your constitution, if you're struggling with that, well, then you're gambling. You're saying my life is awesome unless that happens. Well, you should do something about that. Similarly, if you're, I'm making stuff up now, but there's always an action. If you think the government's going to swoop in and and do something crazy with taxes related to crypto, well, there's jurisdictional choices you can make. You can move to a different state, or you could go to, I'm not recommending this. There's a lot of talk about Puerto Rico or other places. And I'm not saying to do that, but there are, whatever you're anxious about, there is typically an action you could take to relieve it. Or I want to get in, I'm worried that I'm too late, but I don't want to miss. Well, dollar cost average in for a fixed amount of time, 6 months. Make it concrete.
And some of the ways that people can materialize their plan, right? Because in my experience, working with people who are working on their mental health and substance abuse recovery, and of course that there's a lot of overlap there. Scheduling and planning becomes an important part of people's daily structure, and that's what allows people to make the behavior changes that they want to make using their prefrontal cortex. I recommend everybody, consider the benefits of omega-3, which improves the prefrontal cortex. You can get it for about $5 a month, and as long as you're not on blood thinners, then it should be part of your diet, scientifically speaking, right? Based on people's the actual brain is supposed to be made up of 25% omega-3. That's what the dry weight of the brain is supposed to be. In the omega-3 gets turned into the electrical insulation, the rubber that goes around all the wires in your brain. And that allows people to plan and schedule their time better, and allows them to think more clearly. I think more clearly due to that. And so being able to make a plan. So what does that look like in crypto? So in crypto, it looks like you write it down on a piece of paper. it looks like you plug it into a spreadsheet. It looks like you, you watch Quant Gang and you say like, oh, Maddie's strategy is different than Whales Only, is different than Future Us and Cream, and I'm going to try the Cream strategy, right? To give it a name and to define it. Now, another way, and this is something I've been practicing recently, not only to stake your hex, which takes it off your hands for you, which I've done for a while, but also even to create a plan for your liquid hex, because for me, my plan was, oh, just once a year, I'll, maybe take profits on my interest and restake my principal. And so, but that leaves, what do I do with this big chunk of liquid? I didn't know that it would be such a big chunk, and now that's stressful to me. And so, what can I do? Well, I can make smaller stakes with to spread it out. So I just did quarterly stakes, which was difficult to do. I hate sending money to my future self, but I love receiving money from my past self. Funny how that works. And but paying it forward, definitely the strategy for me. And then another thing that I've started doing for my mental health, not just because I wanted to learn about the tech, but because I have to have a plan for my liquid hex now in order to not be overwhelmed with anxiety or be so distracted from being grounded, living my life, right? And focusing on the parts of crypto that I want to build for mental health and my personal life. So limit orders.
Yeah.
And so I practice setting some of those at matcha.xyz. Now, I'm aware that they might not work, right? Not everything in crypto works. And when I played around with limit orders, like sell orders before, or maybe it was a buy order in the past, it didn't fill for some reason, even though the price got hit. But the bottom line is that I'm happy with at least having something, right? That's one form of writing down a plan, is setting a limit order that might execute, right? Some people set a limit order to buy hex at 8 cents and they caught the dip that other people, were staying up 24 hours a day trying to wait for a dip, and then they miss it, right? So that's definitely a strategy. So people can set a buy or a sell order. And what that does is if the price gets hit, the bots are supposed to do the trade for you because you sign for it ahead of time. And some people said leaving your browser open might help the trade execute. Other people said, well, if the gas fees aren't too high and the bots can do a tiny arbitrage on the gas fee or something, then they'll execute the trade. I think other people have had it go through just fine.
I think I'm speculating that eventually that'll be the norm. Like limit order, yeah, of course you're going to do a limit order as these dexes become more mature or whatever, because there was a point, I don't know the exact year, but a while ago, it became just the rule of thumb if you were on Fidelity or whatever buying a ETF for a stock, you always put in a limit order. It was considered dumb not to, right? Because you could get and that'll probably happen with Hex, if not other cryptos. Also, it'll be the tech probably maybe needs to be a little more intuitive, a little less flaky. Like if you've had those experiences where it didn't go through, but that'll become the norm eventually.
I want to say thank you to Whales Only for the $55.55 super chat. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. And the message is mental health equals true wealth.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for providing this to the community, Maddie Allin. My pleasure. And thank you, Whales, for all of the special things that you contribute. And I know that, on Quant Gang, right? You're your co-host, I consider Will as a personal friend and somebody who's really a leader in the community in a lot of areas. So it means a lot
Yeah,
to me.
Wales, what he says, mental health equals true wealth. I mean, that's like a catchy phrase, but I would argue it's literally true because
Yes.
if you're exhausted and anxious in a fetal position on the floor, doesn't matter how much darn money with all your relationships destroyed, doesn't matter how much money you have, your life is unpleasant to put it mildly. But if you covered the 80-20 situation where you kept your eye on the prize and didn't try to 80%, you rather than exhaust and drain yourself trying to optimize every little nuance, just go 80-20 rule, get 80% right and then go about your life and be happy, hang out with your
Absolutely.
buds, your family, etc. So that's literally true, Wales. Thanks. Maddie, do you have any, like we all love Hex so much. Is there anything and then I'll share mine or I can go first. Is there any pet peeve you have about Hex or something you dislike?
I'll let you go first. That's
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm
question.
trying to do a trick question or something. I'm not, but like if I could wave a magic wand and change something about the communication, like for those of us that are very familiar with how this product works, terminology is everything. And I come from software, and what you name things on the back end or on the screen, it really matters. And I see a lot of clumsy terminology being thrown around. For example, Whale says, "Nope, no issues." So this is like a nitpicky comment. It's all I could come up with for my own question. Is we're a little loose, probably guilty about this sometimes. We're a little loose with the terminology we use. For example, T-share rate. If someone on a stream says T-share rate, that could mean at least 3 different things. That could mean the US dollar price of a T-share, which appears in a graph on go.hex.com. It could mean the share price, which is the price in Hex for a share, or it could mean the daily payout. The T-share rate, what is the rate that you're getting paid every day? So my proposal, my wish for all streamers and Hexicans that are communicating is to tighten up the terminology. And you don't have to invent it. You just have to look at the product. Like if you go on go.hex.com, what does it say there? Share price. Just share price, which is like 18,000 or whatever. What's the share price? 18,000 hex per T-share. The amount of hex that you receive every day at 00 UTC time, that's not the T-share rate, that's the daily payout. So share price, daily payout, and what else? There was a third one. I guess that's
USD?
Yeah, there's the share. Oh yeah, there's the 3 thing. Yeah, thank you. That's the one that was kind of added on recently, which see the USD price per T share, I actually think is an advanced concept because I've seen in the I'm not just trying to be nitpicky. I've seen newbies confused like, oh, the USD price is $2,000 for a T-share. Where do I buy one? And they're very confused.
T-share.app.
Yeah, okay. Actually, fair enough. So my feedback here is becoming outdated. But here's another way it fogs it up is the share price always goes up. Literally true. But when people hear that, they think you're talking about USD share price now.
Yes.
And they call it a scam because, of course, nothing can go up in dollar value. So it's sometimes there's a very simple solution to a problem, and I think we could help hundreds of people understand all this better if we just tighten up the terminology. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so you want me to criticize Hex now. Let's see what I've got. So one of the things, because Hex is so good, because we can literally spend hundreds of hours talking about it and keep discovering different ways to explain it that helps people to reach a broader audience. One thing that I wish we talked about more as a community, right, would be this idea that, like, people don't have to be ready in order to change. And this is coming directly from my therapy experience, working with a population of people who were court ordered to do treatment. And so these people did not want to change. They were resistant to change. And it's kind of, I would say, common knowledge, or most people mistakenly believe that somebody has to be ready to change in order to change, because it seems like that's how it works, right? That there's an internal motivation and then an external action when people change. Um, the way I see it is very different. The way I see it is um, that we don't need to just find people who are ready for Hex. We can actually mint people who are ready, who don't even know that they're ready, right? But that have similar goals, right? And I think um, a lot of people get lost unfairly, right? Because they get blamed for being in an unhealthy monetary system, for being in a bad environment. And in order for me to tell somebody the truth, the economic truth that lots of other economists, right, are saying, even outside of crypto and outside of Hex, like, that's a bummer. That's a really sad story. Hey, guess what? Everything you've worked for your whole life, that was a scam. Like, uh, the whole fiat system, it's rigged, right? Like, that's a really sad story. That's a really bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow. And so of course they filter it out. Of course they ignore it. Of course they don't want to know the truth, right? And so
Right.
I think it's so important for us to, like, recognize that it's not the people who are bad, it's the money that's bad. And the way to make the money better is literally, that's what Hex is all about, and that's what it can be about, is finding ways to onboard people and finding ways to allow people to buy their freedom. And then as a community, figuring out what that means, right? Because even on Robert Kiyosaki's show this week, he had Jeff Booth, who I'm a huge fan of. Jeff Booth, of course. Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is the #1 best-selling personal finance book and parenting book, apparently, in the world, and talks about, I think he talks generally about a lot of popular stuff, but also about finding loopholes in real estate in order to leverage. And I'm not sure if I agree with that or not. My point is, he they were talking about abundance. They were talking about um, what would happen if people didn't have to work.
Hmm.
What would they do with their time? And there have been a lot of people, Keynes, right? Was it John Maynard Keynes, who came up, kind of, some people believe, with modern monetary theory, which is where you can print as much money as you want, and as long
That's
as
right.
it's not too liquid, and you don't give it to the wrong people in the market, then everything can go up forever, and that's somehow good for the economy, right? And inflation is not a problem, right? We know that a lot of these things probably aren't true and aren't debated enough in academic circles, but the point is, even he predicted that people would only have a 10-hour work week by now, because technology would lead to so much abundance. And
Hmm.
so the fact that technology is not leading everyone to work less and leading prices to come down is because of governments inflating their currencies, a race to the bottom, against each other, right? To these currency wars, and at the end of the day, that's that's theft, right? People are being robbed of the abundance that could be given to all, and so um, I think that's a much cooler story, maybe, right? That we do already have a lot of the tools, and we have, especially with Hex and with technology in general, we have maybe what we're going to need in order to create a world where people don't have to work, can live in abundance, and can solve more problems and continue to make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And that that story you were just describing, I mean, that's the behind the curtains, hard to accept reality. That's the truth. Some people can handle that. That's like drinking from the fire hose. Like, what do you mean that everything I thought about this structure is a fraud or a scam or rigged? I mean, that's a big pill to swallow. And for those that can handle it, you can deliver that to them. I mean, I remember my mind being blown 10 years ago, approximately, first learning about all that. And for people that can't handle that or don't have the interest, that maybe I don't want to talk about economists. What are you talking about? Inflation is just what they say on TV, right? And there's another way to hit them, which is, hey, that 5-year CD you have in the bank, how much is that paying you? 0.3%. Oh, interesting. Look over here. There's a CD on the blockchain, so it's take it from the opposite instead of some people want to hear maybe that full macro
Yeah,
background and then be presented with the solution. Some people might want to just see a quick advantageous solution, and then you can fill in the full mosaic of the problem um, over time. It kind of depends on the person.
I think that our narratives will evolve and probably become more effective, which means that they will have to get much briefer and target each individual person, or subgroups is what I really mean. And I think how that could happen, right, is by creating a lot of different front ends and having a lot of different stakeholders. The traditional word stakeholder means that you have a shared interest with someone else, in the sense that you have teamwork, you have a common goal and cause that's going to reward probably all parties, right? And so part of, I think, what people are buying in Hex indirectly, part of the emergent game theory and human behavior change that's occurring with Hex, is that you're not only paying your future self, but you're also creating a pool of stakeholders that will work together for the next 15
Hmm.
years. And wow, how valuable is that? People who are freeing their time. And so, it doesn't require as much money, really, when people are creating their savings plans for 15 years. It doesn't take much money. It doesn't take much participation to pump the price, to um, to create an amazing community. And I think this community is going to evolve on a much different trajectory because of our game theory
Yes.
than communities that came before. I think we'll still run into that problem of having one foot in the past and one foot in the future. And we're going to want to be explicitly identifying, oh, that's why I want to, I have this urge to trade. That's why I haven't finished making my plan for my liquid hex, you know? And so the more that we can learn from each other, and the more that we can implement certain mental health strategies, such as taking omega-3, getting exercise, sleeping more, drinking less, right? Eating healthy. These aren't all things that people can do all the time, but finding finding your smallest motivation to achieve your smallest goal, I think it's a really powerful thing, and something that can even start with just creating, somebody creating their first stake.
Absolutely. And even if someone's what's amazing about HEX is there's completely different target participants that can find value in this. Like if you're a crypto nerd and you know all about price fluctuations and you're all about the liquid and you know about forks and you're going to get your PHEX and you're going to sacrifice, that's all great. Or you just may want a high yielding CD and it just happens
Yes.
to be crypto. That's what I tell people. Like, even if you knew today that the price would never move again, you're still going to get 40, 50, 60% APY. Where are you going to get that anywhere else? Nowhere. Still an amazing deal. So nobody's too late.
Another prediction that I have is that we might find a way to program HEX to allow people to pay themselves, which is a concept that I've been developing for some time now, but essentially represents a different type of behavior lock than occurs in the case of a time lock. So in HEX, what's already built in is doing a time lock, which behavior locks your savings plan to where it limits the behaviors that you can do that you're saying at that moment you create this stake you don't want to do, right? I don't want to sell all my HEX, and so I'm going to make sure of it by changing the incentives, right? And having an incentive structure that holds me accountable, that acts as a truth engine. And so my prediction would be that just like that behavior is able to be programmed into money, that we will also be able to program other behaviors and find other incentive structures to which we can reward ourselves for the type of good behavior we want to see in ourselves. For example, someone could pay themselves a certain bounty to quit smoking tobacco cigarettes or to take a certain number of steps with a Fitbit. There are countless ways, and I think there will be countless people that are looking for things to do because they've bought their freedom with HEX, and I think that would be a really cool thing for our community to build towards.
Yeah, the Fitbit one, since it's technology based, I mean, you could almost implement that today. It's just code, as we say that in software. It's just code. It'd be hard, but it's just code. Whereas the smoking cigarettes is a little different because how do you verify or prove that it happened? I guess if it was like drinking alcohol, you could get a breathalyzer and blow in it.
Well, yeah, there are breathalyzers for tobacco as well, and
okay.
So there are technology solutions, but I agree, going after the low-hanging fruit, and particularly, I've already got a certain number of ways to like get around the Oracle problem when it comes to like tobacco smoking and other behaviors that would be hard to measure with technology currently. But again, that's the point, is like humans are going to need work to do.
That's right.
And why not continue to build out a system that can incentivize such positive behavior change and really not only monetize the time value of money, but monetize human motivation at a self-sovereign level.
It's
right?
like a trustless accountability partner instead of having to tell your friend what you're up to and have him give you a little bit of shit if you don't follow through. Well, this way, there's more on the line.
Yes.
And that would be really cool.
Yeah, be your own validator, that you're not texting your ex because otherwise you get slashed $1,000.
You put it in the contract. Enter the phone numbers that should be committed to never calling, and you can't undo it. So you promise your future self not to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, as
That's
funny as
funny.
that sounds, like that, that could be much more viral than people
Absolutely.
paying themselves for something more conventional health-wise. But I think the sky's the limit, and so that's my goal here with Hex Therapy, and you coming on today and sharing your methods, right, for keeping your stress low. That is going to allow your prefrontal cortex to operate better. It's going to allow your quality of life to be increased because you're not going to have the added burden and stress of the anxiety, right? The fear and the other emotions that come along with having a disorganized approach to um, to your hex finances, right?
That's right. And if you ever create that mechanism for not calling your former girlfriend, I'm going to give you the name now. You will call it the Hex Girlfriend Number Blocker.
That's right. The hex X
The Hex X.
disabler, or
Yeah.
some sort of and that's yeah. We need programmers. We need branding. We need psychologists. We need everybody involved, and so um, yeah, I'm really excited about the future. I'm um, excited to keep working with people. I think I so I I think I'm getting better at like creating game theory. And so tshare.app, right? Like the 15-second game that allows people to onboard by deciding first accidentally what they like, how long they want their first stake to be, and then being able to change that later, but just simplifying the process so people can become a stakeholder, come back later, find out the price is higher, and they have an incentive to pay attention now to and then right, they'll probably end up getting into hex much sooner than they would have, right? um, there is there are going to be so many ways that psychology can be combined with hex game theory and programmable money. It's a dream come true, really,
Yeah.
to be able to think about all this stuff and talk about it with people, and to have the amazing audience that we have here, to be able to learn and maybe even make their own versions and contribute in all the ways that they can. Because again, coming back to this central point of like what is money? Why do we have it? Like, how can we all become the best versions of ourselves possible? Those are questions that we're going to be able to answer through experience, right? And through making predictions and then seeing if that works for us, right? And so the
Yeah, and
this
who would have thought that those two questions would be intertwined? What is money and how to better myself? Well, those
yes,
aren't related. Well, now they are, kind of.
now they are. Um, and I think I didn't appreciate, even someone who predicted that those two things could be related. I didn't realize how relevant understanding sudden wealth syndrome would be until seeing it myself. And so I also wanted to invite people to go to the community tab on YouTube to answer all those surveys there. We've had this is another emergent property of the Hex community that I'm starting to realize now, and have only mentioned a couple times probably before, is the extremely high level of engagement of the people who are
Hmm.
watching these streams. We are having 500, 600 people responding to the surveys. And I haven't, done all my research to see what the response rates are of other crypto channels, but I know in general, if you get 1% of 1% of people to respond to something on the internet, that's like
Right,
standard, right? And
right.
only having what two or 3,000 subscribers to the channel, and the amount of time that people are watching the streams is off the charts. Normally, the longer it goes, the more people are gonna get fed by the algorithm, and then they're going to watch for 3 seconds, they're going to leave, and that's going to pull down the average. So there's tons of people. If the average watch time on a 3 to 5 hour video, it's like 30 or 45 minutes, that means people are watching that content. People are responding. Like 30% of the subscribers are like responding, 20%. Those
Yeah,
numbers are
such an
like,
outlier. There's
it's like,
channels with 100K subscribers, but 1,000, 1%
it's
will engage.
it's interesting because it's like 2000x normal response rates, and it's Hex is up 2000x. So
Coincidence?
well, it makes sense, right? That people
Yeah.
who learn about Hex through YouTube, including myself, are going to be incentivized to go back there and to keep learning, because really that's how you got the goose that laid the golden egg. And so, with that being said, there have been multiple people in the stream, in the comments here today, that say that Richard is supposed to do a live stream this evening, here
Oh,
in about the next hour. And that's certainly exciting for all of us. And I want to make sure that we go ahead and raid Knights of the Crypto Roundtable.
yes, sir.
Um, uh, what final thoughts do you have for us today?
Yeah, I guess you have more control than you think. If you're nervous or anxious about something, don't duck it. Define it in words and in feeling. What is it, and what can you do about it? And then decide either to do that thing or not do it, but to do it consciously. And because you have more power and control than you think.
That's really good advice, and you have been uh, sharing so many nuggets of truth and things that I think are going to be really helpful to the community. So I really wanted to thank you for sharing your insights, and I hope that we'll get a chance to stream again soon. Um,
You're welcome. My
because
pleasure. I really appreciate the
I,
opportunity to share.
I
Been wanting to share some of that for a long time.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. I wanted to go ahead and continue announcing to people that we have gotten far enough along in our planning for the next Vegas conference that we're going to have for Pulse Hex. And so it's the details are still materializing, and uh, people have seen the power of the first Hex conference, which was hosted January 6th through 9th of 2021 this year. We're going to do that again January 6th through 9th of 2022. So that's coming up here in 5 months. And then for 3, 6, 9, so March 6th through 9th, we're going to have the in-person portion of the conference in Las Vegas at a convention hall with breakout sessions, with keynote speakers, expert panels. I mean, the whole 9 yards. So people who loved the Hex meetup, which was like 3x the attendance that we thought we were going to have. We thought we were going to have 100 people. We had 330 people. The community continues to explode. I predict Hex will go viral in the next 7 months before the in-person conference. And so that's why I'm kind of not releasing all the details yet, because I think the OGs, let me put it this way. I don't want the OGs to not get a ticket, because we are going to have to limit them. And right now we're thinking 1,369 tickets will be sold. And so people can find out more by going to pulsehex.com. Pulsehex.com is going to be the program schedule that's still evolving. And then pulsehex.eventbrite.com is where you can see the tickets. And before, I had also had the domain pulsehex2022.eventbrite.com. And then I realized that I actually created a more simplified URL for people already. So it's pulsehex.eventbrite.com is where you can get that ticket. And that is going to include like people's meals. It's going to include renting out this giant space where we'll have enough room to like have everybody in one giant auditorium, all like 1,400 people. And then all those people will be able to break out into separate spaces for maybe, a talk about security and a talk about community, at the same time. And so having really enough space for like 3,000 people is what's needed to be able to move without moving all the chairs and equipment and stuff. And so it's $369 for a ticket, and that'll cover the merch, it'll cover the conference space, the food. It'll be a 2 to 3 day conference, and so we'll keep releasing details. But I wanted to let everybody know about that now. And thank you so much, everybody, for checking out this stream. Let me go ahead and find, I think somebody said it was Balliet Brand's channel that they're doing Knights of the Crypto Roundtable. Let's see here. Oh, Richard is going live. Okay, in 90 minutes. He's got an awesome thumbnail there. That's exciting. Discourse Syndicate has somebody doing TA. Oh, and Balliet Brand, here we go.
There we go.
So when everybody goes to Brand's stream, go ahead and let them know that they're being rated by Hex Therapy, and go ahead and keep catching us on Thursday nights here for Hex Therapy Live and Tuesday nights for Quant Gang. Thank you so much to HEX Monkey for joining.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks, everybody.
And, take care, everybody.